It is 9:07 a.m. on March 18, 1945. The sky above the Ruhr Valley is the color of a bruise, slate gray, pressing down on the industrial heartland of Nazi Germany, broken only by the black columns of flak smoke rising from Dortmund's outer defensive rings below. At 26,000 feet, the temperature outside the fuselage reads -41 degrees Fahrenheit. Ice crystals hang in the thin air like static, catching what little light filters through the overcast and turning it into something pale and indifferent. First Lieutenant Daniel Kowalski is 24 years old. He has completed 31 combat missions over occupied Europe, enough to know what fear smells like inside a pressurized cockpit, enough to have learned that courage is mostly just delayed panic. And today, he is flying the most dangerous stretch of airspace in the world. His aircraft is a P-61B Black Widow night fighter, call sign Ghost 7, assigned to the 422nd Night Fighter Squadron out of Florennes Airfield, Belgium. The P-61 is a twin-engine, twin-boom interceptor, 66 feet of wingspan, 2 Pratt & Whitney R, 2 800 radial engines, producing 2,000 horsepower each, armed with 420mm AN/M2 cannons in a belly turret and 4.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns in a dorsal turret. She is not graceful, she is not fast, she is built to hunt things in the dark, and she does it using her SCR-72O AI radar, the nose-mounted airborne intercept system that can detect an enemy aircraft at 5 miles and paint it on a glowing green cathode scope inside the cockpit. Without that radar, a P-61 crew is essentially flying blind. At 9:07 a.m. and 14 seconds, the SCR-72O goes dark, and the green scope in front of Kowalski's radar operator flickers once, the way a candle does before a draft takes it, and then it is simply gone. Not degraded, not intermittent, gone. The needle drops to 0. The cathode tube goes cold. Behind the cockpit, in the raised radar operator's position, Staff Sergeant Milos Varga stares at the dead screen for exactly 2 seconds before he keys his interphone. Ghost 7, radar's out. I'm getting nothing. Full power failure on the SCR-72O. Kowalski doesn't answer immediately. He is processing the information against everything else happening around him at that moment. The formation of 8 P-61s he is flying with has just crossed into the primary interdiction corridor east of Dortmund, and an airspace currently defended by an estimated 156 caliber 88mm flak guns positioned in concentric rings around the city's industrial district. The flak is already beginning, black puffs detonating at altitude, each one a pressure wave that rocks the airframe and fills the cockpit with the sound of metal complaining. The mission today is not bombing. The 422nd is flying escort and top cover for a formation of B-17Gs from the 398th Bomb Group, 43 heavy bombers inbound to strike the Dortmund-Ems Canal rail junction. The B-17s are at 24,000 feet, 2,000 below Ghost 7. Kowalski's job, his crew's job, is to watch the high approach angles, the vectors where German jets have been slashing through American formations and disappearing back into cloud cover before conventional escort fighters can respond. The Luftwaffe has been flying Messerschmitt Me 262s over the Ruhr since January. Twin-engine jet aircraft. Speed 541 miles per hour in level flight. That is nearly 200 miles per hour faster than the P-61 can fly. The Me-262's armament is 430mm MSA 108 cannons, weapons that can tear a B-17 apart in a single firing pass. The P-61 is supposed to use its radar to detect the jets early, close the intercept angle before the speed difference becomes decisive, and force the German pilots to break off their attack runs. Without the radar, Kowalski has no early warning. He has no intercept solution. He has no ability to see what is coming until it is almost on top of him. At 9:09 a.m., Varga reports a secondary failure. The VHF radio transceiver, separate from the radar but drawing from the same electrical bus, is producing nothing but static on the primary frequency. Ghost 7 is now deaf and blind, flying over the most heavily defended industrial zone in Germany, tasked with protecting 43 bombers from aircraft that can outrun anything the Allies have put in the sky. Below them, the first flak rounds are finding the B-17 formation's altitude. Daniel Kowalski pulls back slightly on the yoke, climbing Ghost 7 another 500 feet, and begins to fly entirely on his eyes. The crew of Ghost 7 on March 18, 1945, consists of 3 men. First Lieutenant Daniel Kowalski, pilot, age 24, from Hamtramck, Michigan, the son of a Polish-American auto worker at the Dodge Main plant. He enlisted at 21, flew training in the AT-6 Texan, cross-trained into the P-61 at Hammerfield, California, and has spent the last 11 months hunting German night fighters over Belgium, the Netherlands, and Western Germany. He is 5 feet 10 inches tall, 162 pounds, with dark eyes that his crew chief describes as the kind that don't blink when they should. Staff Sergeant Milos Varga, radar operator, age 22, from Cleveland, Ohio. Hungarian-American second generation, speaks enough Hungarian to understand the radio chatter from Wehrmacht ground units if the frequencies align. He is the reason Ghost 7 has a confirmed kill record of 3 aircraft in 11 months of operations. He reads the SCR-72, zero scope, the way a pianist reads sheet music, instinctively, continuously, translating the green blips into distance, bearing, and closure rate before they finished forming. I'm Technical Sergeant Roy Alcorn, gunner and crew chief, age 27, from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He operates the dorsal turret's 4.50 caliber Brownings and serves as the aircraft's senior enlisted man. He has been working on aircraft since 1938, when he lied about his age to get a job at an airfield outside New Orleans. He knows the P-61 systems the way other men know their own houses, by feel, in the dark, without needing to look. At 9:11 a.m., Varga climbs down from his raised position and begins working the electrical panel behind the cockpit. The SCR-72O's power feed has failed. Not a blown tube, not a component failure inside the radar itself, but a failure in the wire bundle connecting the radar system to the aircraft's main electrical bus. The bundle runs through the nose section, behind the instrument panel, and the specific failure point is inaccessible in flight without removing panels that take a ground crew 40 minutes to pull. It's the bus feed, Varga reports. The radar's fine. We just can't get power to it. Can you reroute? Kowalski asks. Not in the air. We'd need the maintenance kit and 2 extra hands. This is the impossible problem. stated in plain terms. The SCR-720 requires 115-volt AC power at 400 Hz, drawn from the aircraft's inverter system. The inverter is functioning. The radar is functioning. The wire bundle connecting them is not. There is no backup feed. There is no bypass. The P-61B was not designed with a redundant power path to the radar, because the radar, in 1944 engineering logic, was the redundant system, the thing you used when your eyes couldn't do the job. Now the eyes have to do it alone. At 9:13 a.m., and the VHF radio problem reveals itself to be a separate failure. Aucoin traces it to a cracked antenna connector on the transmitter. Physical damage, likely from flak vibration on a previous mission that no one caught during pre-flight. The receiver still works. Ghost 7 can hear transmissions from the rest of the formation. They cannot send. Kowalski can hear his flight leader, Captain Warren Stellato, calling Ghost 7's position check. He cannot respond. He keys his transmitter anyway, twice, a non-standard signal that means read you, unable to transmit, and hopes Stellato understands. Outside the cockpit, the sky is changing. The cloud deck that covered the Ruhr at briefing has begun breaking up over the target corridor. Thin gray sheets pulling apart and revealing patches of pale winter blue above 28,000 feet. It is both a benefit and a threat. Better visibility for Kowalski. Better visibility for German pilots climbing to intercept altitude. At 9:17 a.m., Aucoin, who has rotated his dorsal turret to the 7 o'clock position as a precaution, reports movement in his peripheral vision. Left high, he says. Contrails. Multiple aircraft. Maybe 20 miles. Kowalski banks Ghost 7 left 15 degrees to put his eyes on the bearing Aucoin has called. It takes him 4 seconds to find them. 4 white threads drawn across the blue above the cloud layer, perfectly parallel, moving left to right across his field of view, at a speed that does not match propeller aircraft. The contrail pattern is thin, continuous, and the speed of their lateral movement at 20 miles distance is wrong for anything piston-powered. Me-262s. He counts 4 separate contrails. At 9:17 a.m. and 30 seconds, Kowalski makes his first critical decision. He does not break formation to climb and intercept. Not yet. He holds his altitude, holds his heading, and watches the contrails for 30 more seconds, counting their movement against fixed reference points in his visual field, the edge of a cloud bank, the angle of the sun, to build a picture of what the German pilots are doing. They are not attacking yet. They are positioning. The Me-262 pilots are climbing to a high perch, the tactical position at 30,000 feet or above, from which they can dive on the B-17 formation at maximum speed, fire a single burst, and use their velocity to escape through the formation before the escort fighters can react. It is the only tactic available to them given the jet's mechanical limitations. The Jumo 004 engines that power the Me-262 are fragile at low throttle settings and take 11 seconds to spool from idle to full power. German pilots have learned to fight at high speed and not to throttle back, which means once they commit to their dive, they are committed. They cannot easily abort or maneuver. Kowalski knows this. He has been briefed on Me-262 tactics in 7 separate intelligence sessions since November. He has studied the intercept reports from the 422nd's sister squadrons. He has, in 11 months of operations, never actually fought a jet. "Varga," he says, "I need you in the nose position." The P-61B has a nose observation blister, a small plexiglass panel forward of the cockpit that allows limited forward observation from a prone position. It was designed for the radar operator to visually confirm radar contacts at close range. Varga drops into it, presses his face against the plexiglass, and begins watching the sky ahead and above. "I see them," Varga says. "4, high, maybe 32,000. Call their movement. Don't stop calling it." At 9:19 a.m., the first engine problem begins. The port engine, the left Pratt & Whitney R2800, develops a magneto fault. Kowalski feels it before the gauge confirms it. A slight roughness in the engine's rhythm. A barely perceptible vibration difference between left and right that a less experienced pilot might attribute to turbulence. He checks the manifold pressure. The left engine is running rough at 42 inches of mercury. He cycles the magneto switch. The roughness doesn't resolve. "Left mag is intermittent," he tells Aucoin. "I can try to isolate it from back here, but how long?" 5 minutes minimum." He does not have 5 minutes. The German jets above him are still positioning, but the B-17 formation is 9 miles ahead now, beginning its bomb run, which means the flak below will intensify, and the Me-262 pilots will time their attack to begin during the most chaotic portion of the defensive fire, when the American escort fighters are most likely to be maneuvering to avoid their own anti-aircraft guns. At 9:21 a.m., the right engine begins surging. Not failing, surging. The R2800 is spooling up and down in 20-second intervals, at the manifold pressure climbing from 42 to 48 inches and back down, the exhaust stacks flaring and dimming on the right side of the nacelle. It is a carburetor issue. Ice, most likely, drawn into the intake at this altitude and temperature, partially blocking the fuel-air mixture and causing the engine to run lean on each surge cycle. 2 engines running abnormally. No radar, no transmitter. 4 German jets in a high-altitude perch, preparing to attack 43 bombers that Ghost 7 has been tasked to protect. This is the moment Kowalski understands that no procedure in any manual he has ever read covers this situation. At 9:22 a.m., he keys the interphone. "Listen to me. Both engines are compromised. We have no radar and no transmit. The 262s up there are going to come down in the next 3 to 4 minutes. I am going to put us between them and the bombers. Roy, I need everything the turret has. Milos, I need your eyes. Don't stop talking." There is a brief silence. "Ghost 7, Aucoin says from the dorsal turret, in the particular tone of a man from Baton Rouge who has decided something and is done discussing it. "Ready? If you want to see how Kowalski and the crew of Ghost 7 turned a dead radar and 2 failing engines into the most unlikely air engagement of the Ruhr campaign, hit that like button right now. It helps us bring more forgotten stories to the people who deserve to hear them. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications. We're in the archives every day. Back to Kowalski. This video gives you the story, but the Combat Blueprint, our free newsletter, gives you everything that doesn't fit in a video. Plus deeper details. Forgotten Heroes, free to join. 10 seconds to sign up. Link in the description. Now, back in the video. At 9:23 a.m., the Me-262s roll inverted at 31,000 feet and begin their dive. Kowalski sees the contrails curve, the four white threads bending sharply downward toward the B-17 formation below. And he has already begun his response before his conscious mind has finished processing what he is seeing. He pushes the throttle forward on both engines, accepting the roughness in the left and the surging on the right, and pulls Ghost 7's nose up 15 degrees into a climbing turn that will bring him into the path of the diving jets. He is not trying to match their speed. He cannot match their speed. A P-61B at full power in level flight does 366 miles per hour. He and Me-262 in a dive will pass 550 miles per hour before the pilot levels out. Kowalski knows this calculation. He has done it in his head every day since his first intelligence briefing on the jets. He is not trying to chase them. He is trying to make them turn. The P-61's 420mm cannons are fixed, firing forward. To aim them, Kowalski has to aim the entire aircraft. At 9:24 a.m., as the lead Me-262 drops through 27,000 feet in a steep diving approach on the B-17 formation, Kowalski puts Ghost 7 directly in the German pilot's flight path and opens fire. The range is 1,800 yards. The convergence for the cannons is set at 300 yards. At 1,800 yards, the cannon rounds are still in their trajectory arc, spreading slightly, and the probability of a hit is low. Kowalski knows this. He is not shooting to kill the jet. He is shooting to be seen. The Me-262 pilot sees the muzzle flash from the P-61's nose and brakes. It is a hard brake, the German pilot pulling the jet into a rolling turn to the right, bleeding speed, losing the line of his attack on the B-17 formation. The Me-262 screams past Ghost 7 at roughly 200 yards separation, the Jumo engines leaving a wall of jet wash that hits the P-61 like a physical blow and sends it into an uncontrolled 15-degree roll. Kowalski corrects. The left engine coughs hard during the recovery, the magneto fault spiking under the stress of the maneuver, and for 2 seconds, the engine is producing less than half its rated power. Ghost 7 yaws left. Kowalski's right boot drives the rudder pedal to the floor. 2 and 3 are still coming, Varga calls from the nose. 12 o'clock high, 15 degrees off axis. The second and third Me-262s have not broken. They have watched their lead pilot maneuver away and continued their dive, and they are now committed. No throttle back, no abort available. The Jumo engines wound up and not capable of rapid response. They are going to pass through the B-17 altitude, regardless of what Ghost 7 does. Kowalski pulls the nose up to 40 degrees, almost a climbing vertical attack that his airspeed cannot sustain, and fires again. At 9:25 a.m. and 20 seconds, the second Me-262 takes hits. 3 20mm rounds from Ghost 7's belly turret strike the German jet's right engine nacelle at approximately 600 yards range. The jet does not explode. It does not immediately go out of control, but the Jumo 004 on the right side begins streaming white smoke, the sign of an internal compressor failure, and the Me-262 begins a shallow, uncontrolled descent to the right, its pilot fighting to maintain level flight on one engine. The jet passes through the B-17 formation at 24,000 feet without firing. Its cannon run is ruined. The third, Me-262, fires. Its 430mm Mk-108 cannons send a burst through the formation at 9:25 a.m. and 40 seconds, and Kowalski watches two B-17S take hits, one losing an engine and banking out of formation, one trailing fire from its left-wing root. He has no way to know if those crews survive. He files the image away in some part of his mind that is not flying the aircraft, and he turns toward the fourth Me-262. The fourth jet has not committed to its dive. It is holding at 30,000 feet. He's circling, the German pilot watching the engagement below, evaluating. Kowalski recognizes the tactic. The fourth pilot is the flight leader. He is assessing whether to bring his aircraft into the fight or to keep it in reserve. At 9:26 a.m., the left engine quits. Not rough, not intermittent. Quits. The manifold pressure drops to zero. The propeller windmills uselessly in the slipstream, and Ghost 7 yaws hard left as the surviving right engine, still surging, tries to compensate for the asymmetric thrust. The aircraft drops 400 feet in 6 seconds. A coin in the dorsal turret is rotating to cover the engagement at 9:26 a.m. when the drop occurs. The negative G moment lifts him out of his seat against the turret harness hard enough to bruise his collarbone. He does not leave his position. His hands stay on the turret controls. "Left engine," Kowalski says, his voice flat. "It's out. I'm feathering." He hits the feathering button. The propeller blades rotate to edge on against the airflow, reducing drag. The P-61 is now a single-engine aircraft over Germany with one surging engine and no radar at 25,600 feet in the middle of an active engagement. "Danny," Vargas says from the nose, "the fourth one is coming down." At 9:27 a.m., Kowalski makes his second major decision. He does not turn for Belgium. He does not begin a single-engine emergency descent toward friendly territory. He puts Ghost 7's remaining engine at full military power and climbs toward the incoming fourth, Me-262. The logic is brutal and precise. At their current altitude, a single-engine P-61 cannot outrun a jet. It cannot outclimb a jet. It cannot outturn a jet. The only option that does not end with Ghost 7 being destroyed from behind in a pursuit engagement is to meet the German aircraft head-on, where the combined closure rate of both aircraft makes the shooting window so short that neither side can aim with precision. Head-on, in a single-engine P-61 with no radar, and two crewmen who have not said a word about the choice he's making because they have nothing left to say. At 9:27 a.m. and 40 seconds, the fourth Me-262 drops its nose and begins its firing pass. The closure rate between the two aircraft is roughly 850 miles per hour. At that speed, the distance from 1 mile to gun range covers in under 4 seconds. Kowalski opens fire at 1,200 yards. The German pilot opens fire at 800 yards. In the Me-262's 30mm rounds pass above and to the right of Ghost 7. The German pilot's aim thrown off by the P-61's unexpected head-on approach, which he clearly did not anticipate from an aircraft that should be running. Kowalski's 20mm rounds catch the Me-262 across the port wing route as the two aircraft flash past each other at combined speed, and the German jet rolls inverted, losing control of its left wing surface, and enters a spiral that Aucoin watches from the dorsal turret. "He's going down," Aucoin says. "He's not recovering." At 9:28 a.m., the right engine surges again, and this time it does not come back. The surge peak reaches 52 inches of manifold pressure, beyond the rated limit, and the carburetor ice that has been partially blocking the intake shifts into the throttle body and starves the engine completely for 6 seconds. Kowalski holds the dead aircraft in a glide, the only sound in the cockpit. Now the wind noise and the windmilling of 2 dead propellers. Ghost 7 is gliding over Germany, both engines out. The altitude is 24,800 feet. Belgium is 280 miles to the west. At 9:29 a.m., Kowalski begins working the right engine's primer system. The R2800 has a direct fuel primer that bypasses the carburetor. It was designed for cold start situations, not for air start procedures. But Kowalski has read the engine manual twice through, and he remembers a footnote in the Pratt & Whitney R2800 overhaul manual that describes a condition called carburetor ice washout, which occasionally clears spontaneously when the engine is allowed to cool and then reprimed. It is not a procedure. It is a footnote. He primes the right engine for 12 seconds and hits the starter. Nothing. He primes again for 8 seconds. At 9:31 a.m., the right engine catches, roughly unevenly, running on 4 of its 18 cylinders before smoothing out 2, perhaps 12. But it is running, producing an estimated 600 horsepower against the rated 2,000, and it is enough to stop the descent. Ghost 7 levels out at 21,400 feet and begins a slow westward turn. Kowalski does not try to restart the left engine. The left engine's propeller is feathered. The magneto fault has almost certainly caused internal damage from the power fluctuation, and an attempted air start on a damaged engine over Germany is a way to create a fire rather than a solution. He calls the partial engine running a miracle and flies west on 600 horsepower and a prayer. The navigation is dead reckoning, no instruments beyond a compass, an airspeed indicator, no radio contact with anyone, no way to know where the German flak belts are tracking. Kowalski holds 270 degrees magnetic, watches the compass, and descends slowly as the engine produces less and less power above 18,000 feet. Varga crawls back from the nose blister and takes a position beside Kowalski, reading the airspeed and calling altitudes from the altimeter as they descend through layers of cloud. Aucoin remains in the dorsal turret, eyes moving continuously across the sky behind them, never stopping. At 10:14 a.m., they cross the Belgian border at 6,400 feet. Kowalski does not know this with certainty. He knows it because the flak stops. German flak does not follow Allied aircraft across the western border of Germany. The guns are radar-directed and zone-limited, and when the last black puff closes off behind them and the sky ahead goes quiet, Kowalski lets out a breath that he has been holding, it seems, since 9:07 a.m. The right engine quits again at 10:22 a.m. This time, it does not restart. They are at 5,100 feet over Belgium, near the town of Tienen, and Kowalski has approximately 45 seconds to select a landing site before the glide runs out. He picks a field A long, flat agricultural field, dormant, the soil frozen in the March cold, and puts Ghost 7 into it. The landing gear comes down. 2 of the 3 gear legs lock. The nose gear does not lock, a hydraulic failure, probably a line damaged in the flak-induced vibration earlier in the mission. And Kowalski makes the call in 2 seconds. Gear up, belly landing, hold the aircraft off the ground as long as possible to bleed speed. Ghost 7 touches Belgian soil at 10:23 a.m. at approximately 140 miles per hour. The aircraft slides 800 feet across frozen ground, the belly of the fuselage peeling back against the soil, the twin booms catching ruts and torquing the airframe, the dorsal turret grinding against the earth as the aircraft settles onto its side. A fuel cell ruptures in the left nacelle. The smell of aviation fuel fills the cockpit in an instant, and all 3 men are out of the aircraft before it has fully stopped moving. And Kowalski lands in the field with a fractured left wrist, incurred when his arm struck the throttle quadrant during the final impact, and a laceration above his right eye from the instrument panel. Varga has bruised ribs from the nose blister structure compressing around him during the slide. Aucoin, who rode the dorsal turret down into the earth, has a dislocated right shoulder and a 2-inch gash along his left forearm where the turret framework sheared across it. All 3 men are standing in a Belgian field at 10:24 a.m., watching Ghost 7 settle into the soil, and none of them are on fire. Belgian farmers reach them within 20 minutes. American MPs from a nearby logistics depot arrive 40 minutes after that. Kowalski is taken to the 97th General Hospital at Liège, where his wrist is set and casted and his laceration is sutured. Varga and Aucoin are treated at the same facility. The mission debrief, conducted at Florennes the following day, with Kowalski present, his left arm in a plaster cast, runs 3 hours and 40 minutes. The intelligence officers are particularly interested in the 4th, Me-262. Aerial reconnaissance photographs taken over the Ruhr the afternoon of March 18th confirm 4 downed German aircraft in the target corridor. 2 are confirmed as Me-262s, identifiable by the distinctive twin-boom wreckage and swept-wing profile. 1 is confirmed as lost to Aucoin's dorsal point 5.0 calibers, which put rounds through the 3rd jet's cockpit during its firing pass on the B-17 formation. The intelligence officer recalculates this twice before writing it into the official record. Total confirmed aerial victories by Ghost 7 on March 18, 1945. 4 Me-262s, downed or disabled. Achieved with no functioning radar. Achieved with both engines failed or failing through most of the engagement. Achieved by a crew of 3 flying on instruments, instinct, and 2 pairs of eyes that never stopped moving. The 2 B-17S struck during the 3rd jet's firing pass. The 1 engagement Ghost 7 could not stop, were both recovered. The crew of the burning B-17 from the 398th Bomb Group bailed out over friendly territory. 6 of its 10 crewmen survived. 4 did not. Their names are not in this story, but they are in the records, and they are remembered. Kowalski remains at the 97th General Hospital for 11 days. He is returned to flight status on March 29, 1945. He flies 2 more combat missions before the German surrender on May 8th. Ghost 7 does not fly again. Her wreckage is assessed by a maintenance team from the 422nd, photographed for engineering study, and left in the Belgian field where she came to rest. The photographs end up in the archives of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where they sit for 40 years before a researcher notices them while studying P-61 operational histories. Daniel Kowalski returns to Hamtramck, Michigan, in September 1945. He is 25 years old, carrying a closed fracture that is healed with a slight irregularity in the left wrist bone that he will feel in cold weather for the rest of his life. He does not go back to the factory. He uses the GI Bill to attend Wayne State University, where he studies mechanical engineering. He graduates in 1949 and takes a position with Pratt & Whitney's engineering division, the same company that built the R2800 engines that twice quit on him over Germany and twice partially came back. He works there for 31 years, retiring in 1980 as a senior engineer in the turbine design division. His colleagues know him as meticulous, unflappable, and constitutionally incapable of leaving an unsolved problem alone. He does not talk about March 18, 1945, publicly until 1987, when a historian from the Air Force Historical Research Agency contacts him in connection with a study on P-61 operational effectiveness. He speaks for 4 hours. The transcript runs 62 pages. He receives the Distinguished Flying Cross for the March 18th engagement, awarded in a ceremony at Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Michigan in October 1945. And the citation describes the action in 2 sentences. It does not mention the dead radar, the failed engines, or the head-on pass at a German jet in a single-engine aircraft with no instruments and no backup. Kowalski keeps the medal in a desk drawer. Milos Varga returns to Cleveland and works as an electrical technician for 37 years. He and Kowalski exchange Christmas cards every year from 1945 to 2001 and meet in person at 4 separate P-61 reunions held between 1967 and 1991. At the last reunion in Columbus, Ohio, Varga tells a reporter from the Columbus Dispatch that what he remembers most about March 18th is not the German jets or the engine failures, but the sound of Kowalski's voice on the interphone, steady, completely steady, when both engines were out and they were gliding over Belgium in silence. He sounded like a man reading a grocery list, Varga says. Roy Aucoin returns to Baton Rouge and opens an aircraft maintenance business that eventually employs 14 people and services private aircraft across 3 parishes for 42 years. He retires in 1987. His dislocated shoulder heals completely. He can still rotate his arm in the full demonstration of a properly functioning glenohumeral joint, which he apparently demonstrates at every reunion with considerable personal satisfaction. Daniel Kowalski dies on February 11, 2003, in Dearborn, Michigan. He is 82 years old. Milos Varga dies in 2009. Roy Aucoin dies in 2014, the last surviving member of Ghost 7's crew, at the age of 96. None of them considered what happened on March 18, 1945, to be heroism. They considered it to be what you did when the alternative was worse. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about men who flew broken aircraft over defended territory, who made impossible decisions in seconds, who came home and never told anyone. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Tell us if you've heard a story like this one that deserves to be told. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Daniel Kowalski and the crew of Ghost 7 don't disappear into silence. The 4 men in those Me Too 6-2s, we don't know their names. They were doing what their country had trained them to do. The 6 B-17 crewmen who didn't make it out of the burning bomber on March 18th. They were 20 and 22 and 24 years old. They never came home. But the men who survived carried their memory forward across the decades, in Christmas cards sent every year without fail, in 4-hour interviews with military historians, in the quiet weight of a distinguished flying cross kept in a desk drawer, rather than displayed on a wall. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.